Hello and welcome to today's show, The Breakthrough Podcast. I am your host, Reba Bell. Hey guys, thank you for listening. If you love this show, sign up for Anchor.fm. It's a great way to build your podcast and get paid for doing it. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's by Spotify. It's the easiest way to build a podcast with everything that you need all in one place. Anchor has tools that allows you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone. When you're hosting on Anchor, you can distribute your podcast on listening platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and more. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. And best of all, it's free. Anchor is totally free. And again, you can sign up at Anchor.fm to get started today. Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Breakthrough Podcast. Of course, I am your host, Reba Bell. Today's episode, I literally, guys, just changed it. We're still stemming on, we're doing self-development. I'm talking about more self-development I've been talking about it for June and then July. And we're still stemming from how we are portraying ourselves as individuals. If you haven't listened to the other podcast, basically what we're doing is remember the word of the year, elevation. We cannot forget that. We're going to higher levels in God. So on this podcast and many podcasts that you listen to, we help you have a breakthrough at the end, the middle, or the beginning on an aha moment on what you hear or you select to say, okay, there is something that I need to change, or that is something that I see someone else need to change. So that's what we do on this podcast. That's why it's called the Breakthrough Podcast, because we help people have breakthroughs as we listen. I am the Breakthrough Coach. You can find me on Instagram. You can find me on Facebook. But we're going to get right into it. Back to what I was saying. This podcast today, this episode today literally just got changed 20 minutes ago, and I'll tell you why. It was going to still stem from, we're going to talk next week or the week after. We're going to talk about, we're talking about how you're healing, but in the process of you healing from any kind of domestic violence, trauma, we're still, because we're rebranding, guys, you guys know that, how you're healing, and sometimes your healing is a factor of the relationships you in, the relationships that and the friendships that you had. So last week's podcast, I personally talked about a personal situation of mine that a best friend ghosted me, and what our trauma bond, we was connected with a trauma bond. So guys, that's what we're doing. I am mostly doing self-development this month, and then next month we're going to change it around. And I got some big stuff that's happening next month. So you have to listen to the podcast to find out. But I'm changing the episode today because I was gonna talk about what about your friends, meaning, are you a good friend? Do you consider yourself a good friend? And why not? And we're gonna talk about some aspects of what the boundaries of a good friend is after you have endured so much pain and trauma in relationships, how you bring them over into your friendships. A lot of us don't know that we do that, but we do. But we're gonna get back to that either next week or the week after, because I think next week I'm gonna have my son on, and then the week after we'll get back to that episode. But today's episode is technically about my son, but it's technically about, of course, it's got to be about a breakthrough, but of course, this is more me venting, but this is more of me helping myself, but helping other people. When your children are going through something mentally, physically, and my son, if you guys don't know, I have 2 kids. I have a 14-year-old boy, the sweetest young guy in the world. And I have a 4-year-old little princess girl. I'm done. So My son right now is, as we all know, when we was teenagers, he's transitioning. And when you're transitioning, it could be a little hard. And he's having the hardest time. And I'm guessing this is the phase because, of course, I'm not a boy and I wasn't a boy. So a lot of men, if you're listening to this, could chime in, leave notes, leave messages. If you're listening on YouTube. Also, we are on YouTube. Please subscribe to our YouTube page. It's still called The Breakthrough Podcast. Little snippet there. But, so he's going through a phase where boys and girls are different. He's going through a phase where he has memory loss. And we're going to say memory loss is not memory loss technically, but he's going through a phase where now he has to be more responsible. And mother can't do everything. I would not be raising a mama's boy. I'm not raising a mama's girl. Now I might be a little more lenient with my baby girl, but when she gets 14, 15, there's responsibilities that she has to do too. So let's do a little backstory. My son, I have a cleaning business and I also do this, the coaching. He's in my assistant and everything. Now, I made my son an assistant probably like, with my cleaning business, it's been going on 9 years. But my son, he's my assistant for everything because he's very intelligent. He knows what he's doing, technology. Use your kids as you can use them for their gifts. He has a gift of drawing. He knows to draw very, very well. He wants to be an artist. He wants to be more in drama. He's very funny, comedian-wise. And so he's more artistic with everything else with his life. And he has a lot of things going for himself, but he's the most respectable, mannerable kid you will ever find. It's very sweet. Doesn't really get an attitude. Not disrespectful or anything. So I do take that as a positive. But we do have to understand, just because we have children that are technically good children on the spectrum of they're not in gangs, they're not doing drugs, they're not disrespectful, they're not running away, they're not doing things that teenagers do around his age. We still have to remember we can't give them a leeway of slack and say, oh, because you're good and you're responsible and you're respectful. Okay, when it comes to your responsibilities as a young man going into a young adult man, because he's just starting high school, he's going to be starting this year, but he's in a Jumpstart program right now. If I give the backstory of that, he's going to a military high school. So he chose this because my son actually wants to be in the military. He's been saying this since he's 5. I thought it was going to be some whim, but he wants to be in the military. He hasn't gave up on that. So he enrolled himself into a military high school. It was an option of other high schools, but he said he wanted to go to this military academy, which is great for him. And I love it. I love that he made that choice and that responsibility. That's how mature he is on certain things. But lately, this transition, we have been going through a transition as a whole, an entire family. And so this transition, just as well as it's hard for me, it's hard on him. The things that me and him talk about, we're very close. We talk about a lot of other things that he might not tell his father. I know he doesn't tell his stepdad. And so he talks to me about a lot of things that's hurting him right now because his mama is making a different transition and moving into a different phase. And so as our kids watching, or my kids is watching me, your kids watching you, I talk to him a lot and I express to him on things that is going on. And I express to him why I express to him on things that's going on. So I have him involved in my assistant on my business because one day, mommy is an entrepreneur. He might want to be an entrepreneur. It's okay if he don't. He knows the college he want to go to and everything. It's okay if he does not know if he what he wants to do right now. But we have to understand they are going into adulthood. He's 14 and he only have about to be 15 in December. Kids only have a certain amount of window and it's so short of growing up and to learn not everything, but the main important things. I'm teaching him responsibility right now. And because he's so used to his mom being a superhero, perfect example, in 8th grade, he kept leaving stuff at home. And because, I'm an entrepreneur, I work from home. He calls and, Mommy, I left my bed clothes. I left my bed shoes. I left this. I left my lunch so many times. And granted, the school was right up the street, but I had to tell him one day, Mommy can't keep on being a superhero. You got to be responsible, because one day may not be here technically, and one day you still got to do what you got to do regardless if I'm around or not. I don't care if I'm sitting in the house. You have to be responsible. You old enough to be responsible. You're not 8. So we're in this phase right now, and this is a big gap, and it's hard for me because it's new for me, guys. So me having a 14, 15-year-old that's very responsible, very mountable, and very respectful, I still have the same. Other people look at him and be like, oh, you got the perfect child. Technically, no, because I still have the same things that I have to do the same way you guys have to do it. Meaning, teaching him responsibility at an early age. Taking care of your stuff the night before. Doing the things you have to do. We had an issue today. The reason why I end up transitioning for this podcast, because it's my podcast and I could transition, and I love that. But I wanted to bring this point up of, are we raising mama boy and mama girls? Because girls could be mama girls too. Meaning, no, I do not technically believe that children should be kicked out, placed out, put out the house at 18. I do believe that it is your job before 18 to instill to them. They have to have responsibilities. They're going to have to pay bills. Like I did on another podcast, are you teaching your children financial responsibility? Meaning how to pay bills, how to budget. But at the same time, my son knows all this. So at the same time, I'm teaching him this. He's working for me. He gets paid. He knows that he can't just spend his money. He has to spend it on the responsibilities. But we go and we buy him this $45 bus pass. He only had literally technically 2 weeks of school left, jump start, which is today. This week is the last week. He gets to the school today as I'm dropping him off and tell me he lost his bus pass. So now mommy is, if any parent is listening to this, parents, not people that's single, not people that don't have kids, you know where your mind goes into. First, you're going to 0 to 10 because you want to yell. I didn't yell at him. I wanted to. I said, what? Why? I told you to keep it in your book bag. Make a long story short, he didn't have it once we pulled up to the school. But you go to 0 to 10 first. Then you start thinking, oh my God, I have to do this. You start going down your whole list because I'm busy. Just because I work from home, I have 1,001 things I have to do before my kids even get out of school. So I scheduled that time frame. So you thinking about, should I pick them up? Should I not pick them up? And if I pick them up, I got to schedule this and this. It's a lot. It's a lot on me, but also it's a lot on him. I want to extend the olive branch and say, give him grace. But how much grace do you give your children before they become mama's boys and mama's girls, and they're not learning their lesson because you're always saving them? They're not understanding the importance of being financially responsible, but being altogether responsible. Yes, he's going to make mistakes. He's going to do this, but if you keep reiterating, and you're not seeing the change, it's the same way that God loves us. He gives us grace, okay? God gives us grace every day, but we can't keep doing and repeating the same thing and then going back to God saying, oh, I'm sorry, I'm not going to do that again, or not being cautious of the mistakes that we're making ahead of time. And so right now I'm trying to teach my son, and I am frustrated. As much as it's a frustrating process, it's a work in progress for me, because this year, like I told you guys before, I asked God for patience this year. I literally a lot of things that we say, be careful what you ask for, but a lot of things God has been working with me personally on my patience, and it has been with my 2 personal kids and everything I'm going through right now. And of course, guys, you know the stories. You will know the stories because I'll tell them, because that's what I do. I use my own stories to help other people to understand we're not the only ones that going. You're not the only one going through it. I'm going through it just as well as with you. So that's why I use this podcast to help you have breakthroughs. I am just as a loving parent, a supportive parent, just as I'm a drill sergeant and a heart parent. I am raising a young black boy, okay? But I'm raising a young man altogether, regardless. And he has to learn what the repercussions is of losing your bus pass. I'm driving home and I'm like, oh, I gotta do this podcast. I'm going to talk about this. This was like more of a venting session for me, but it's helping me to help you too. So guys, parents, if you listen to this, chime in. You can message me or whatever and let me know what you guys think I should do. But repercussions meaning it's only his last week. Should I make him walk home? It's not a short walk. Now, technically, it's not a short walk. Should I make him walk halfway? Should I, make him work harder in the business this week? Because on top of, me doing this, I have to run my business, and my business, is very busy this week. So those are things I was thinking about or whatever, and I'm not, suggestions I have, but if you guys ever been through this, help me out, okay? But at the same time, I want us to all understand in the point of, we're not raising mama boys and mama girls, meaning, yes, we could give them grace. We can give them the leeway, but we have to reiterate when things happen, especially with us as adults, we can't walk around and just say things happen. If I was an adult and I lost my bus card and I couldn't get on the bus, that was my responsibility. So I can't call somebody and say, can you give me a ride? I technically could because it's a little easier as an adult, but technically people working, they not thinking about that I got to walk or I ain't got a bus card because I lost my bus card. I'm just going to use it as an example. I learned and my mom taught me at an early age on what responsibility is, because technically the real talk is parents not going to be around all their lives. One day God is going to take them home. I'm sorry to say that, but it's the truth. And with everything that's going on in this crazy world, every day we need to hold our children tighter, but at the same time to make them understand the reality is that I can't save you. I'm not going to be your superhero. I'm not Superwoman. I don't go by that title. I don't like that title. And the people that personally know me, know that I do a lot. I do a lot on a daily basis that I will figure out A to Z before the end of the day is over. Well, at the same time, I'm learning that's not healthy. It creates burnout. It creates me not being the best mom. It creates me not being the best entrepreneur. It creates me not being the best person in a relationship. It doesn't, it creates me not being the best friend, technically. Because when we're going through trauma, we're going through hardship, and we're going through hard times, we can actually try to put everything on our plate and do everything in one day or 1 week or whatever. We put it on other people, and it's not other people's fault what our lives got going on. I have a tendency that I snap. It's like, oh, I go, and I'm still working on that because like I told you guys, I am not perfect. I'm working on patience personally with me this year that God is really testing me. And I don't think he's testing me to hurt me. He's testing me to say, daughter, you asked for this. So this is an area I need you to pay attention and be aware of. But also at the same time, I'm giving my son grace. He has to learn a hard lesson the same way I do it for my daughter. Just because she's a girl doesn't mean that she's going to have, she's not going to have the same thing. She has to be more responsible. He has to write down stuff. We talk about this, remembering stuff, checkpoint, check this, check that. And as I'm talking, I think before he gets home, I'm definitely going to pull his drafting board back out and put it back on his wall. So he has a checkpoint on everything that he has to do, because he's getting ready to go into high school and it's going to get a little harder. His responsibilities, especially in high school, he's going to have to remember a lot of stuff. He wants to be in band again. He wants to do a drama in high school. He wants to do a lot of extracurricular activities on top of being and doing this stuff. So this is going to be a transition for both of us, but it's going to be a harder time for him because he has to learn that one day he will be somebody's husband. One day he will be an adult, and it's going to come quicker than what he thinks. And end of the day, it's not anybody's responsibility to be responsible for you and your actions. So this is my podcast for today because I had to get that out. I thank you for listening. If you're listening to this, he will be on next week. It might be video next week because he's going to be on, so you can see both of us next week. And we'll be talking about some things. I don't know yet, but we'll be talking about some things. Because I want you to understand that also doing this podcast, our kids going through stuff too. And I bring this up a lot. You can't think that your kids are the only ones because we take care of them. They're not feeling. They're not having emotions. They're not thinking how we're thinking. So just as well as they're going through stuff, and I know my son is personally going through stuff, I have to teach him to be responsible. I'm going through something as well, but I have to be responsible for you, your sister, getting you guys back and forth to school. So that's, he has to learn that even though situation does happen, responsibility never leaves. So I thank you guys for listening to this podcast. I thank you guys for just being a support because I got the sponsorship, and we're looking for more sponsorships in the future. We got to raise up our numbers. So I thank you for this moment to just be here and be here another day just to see and hear, hear and technically see if you on YouTube, but to hear what I have going on and to help other people have breakthroughs. So I thank you for listening to Breakthrough Podcast, and I'll see you guys back next week. Bye. Thanks for listening in on today's show. You can find me online at RebaBell.com to order any of my products or my books, or you can find me at Instagram at BreakthroughCoach_Reba Arve. Thank you again, and see you next week.